Back again. Another episode of A Muslim and an Atheist Break Bread. Again, thank you to all the people for liking, commenting, just taking their time out to watch what we've got to say, really. So, what you saying, Pops?
I'm good, man.
Right, so, in the comments, like, people have been saying, like, when I'm speaking and engaging, they're telling me what to react to, but someone said to me that you've done a lot on Islam, but you haven't actually just done the story of how it began, that and the story of the Prophet Muhammad. So I thought we'll take a look. This was suggested to me actually, so we'll take a look and see what it's saying. How Islam began in 10 minutes. Okay, let's see how in depth this is.
How Islam began in under 10 minutes. Not a problem. We've started. Okay, so travel back in time with me to a land far, far away and long, long ago. Mecca and Arabia, about the year 570. Mecca is important for two reasons. One, the Kaaba is there, an ancient temple built to worship God. And two, Muhammad, peace be upon him, was born in Mecca. Now, problem. I can't show you Muhammad because it wouldn't be right. I'll tell you why in a bit. But in the meantime, here's his name in Arabic. Nice. Back in the day, Mecca was a lawless place. The only way to be safe was to have backup. Lots of rich big brothers who'd beat up anyone who got in your way. So the place was ruled by the most powerful families who could do pretty much what they wanted. And religion didn't help. By this time, the Kaaba had been filled to overflowing with 360 idols that did nothing to help anyone. So it was a tough place to grow up if, like Muhammad, you were a poor orphan and believed in just one God you couldn't see, like the Jews and the Christians. He called him Allah, the God, in Arabic there. Muhammad's dad died before he was even born, and his mum died when he was just 6. So he was brought up by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, and then, when he died too, by his uncle, Abu Talib, who had the respect of the city's ruling families, so Muhammad was safe for the time being. Muhammad started out as a shepherd and then became a businessman travelling about buying and selling stuff for rich clients. When he did some work for a rich widow called Khadija, she was so impressed by his honesty and skill that they ended up getting married, and for a while it looked like Muhammad was going places. Well, he was, but not how you think. Every year in the month of Ramadan, different calendar, different names for the months, there was a big party around the Kaaba when people made sacrifices to the idols. Muhammad hated it. So he'd get out of town and sleep in a cave he'd found on top of a nearby mountain. One night, Muhammad's praying to Allah when wham! There's the angel Jibreel, you might say Gabriel, standing right in front of him. Read, says the angel, but Muhammad couldn't read. No schools, you see. Jibreel keeps on at him. 3 times he says, read. Then he grabs hold of Muhammad and wham! Again, it's like Muhammad's learnt the words off by heart. So he recites the message out loud. Read in the name of your Lord, who created man from a drop of blood. Read, for your Lord is most generous. He who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know. It was a message from Allah. God was speaking to him just like he'd spoken to the prophets in the Jewish and Christian holy books, which meant he was a prophet too. The messages continued for the rest of Muhammad's life. Allah gave him the words to say and the prophet recited them. The words were written down by his friends, and years later they were collected together and became the Muslim holy book.
Can I just say, it sounds like Muhammad had a bit of an agenda. He didn't like to party. So they were making him, forcing him from his yard to go and sleep in the mountains because he didn't like the party atmosphere. Then he come down. It's like, you know, that's that one person who don't want to party in the block. And I'm phoning the police. They're coming. They're on their way. That's fucking good.
The Quran, which means recitation, because Muhammad recited it, you see? Anyway, that was much later, so back to the night of power. Muhammad tells his family, then his friends, and eventually everyone about Allah, that he's the one and only God, that he wants everyone to be treated fairly, and long story short, it didn't go down well with the ruling families of Mecca, who liked things just the way they were, thank you very much. You see, Islam means obedience to Allah, and Muslim means someone who obeys Allah, and the ruling families didn't want anyone obeying anyone else but them. So the people who believed in Muhammad's message...
What was that? Islam means...
Obedience to Allah, she said.
And a Muslim is someone who follows Allah.
Mm.
Why do people say that Islam means peace? Is that just a turn of phrase?
Because one word can mean several. It just depends which word you choose to use when you're interpreting. So the one word, salam, is the root word.
Okay.
And that means peace. Or it may have 10 different meanings.
Okay.
One of them. So depending on the one she's chosen, that's a translation.
Okay.
But there is no real translation. That's just a convenience thing, and you put a word that you know to represent what them saying.
Yeah, okay.
To Muhammad's message, the Muslims were given a hard time. Some were even tortured and killed. A few of them managed to escape to Abyssinia, Ethiopia. But most were stuck in Mecca. Muhammad also had to cope with the death of his wife, and then just a few weeks later, his uncle too. Feeling very down, he went to the Kaaba to pray to Allah one night. Then, the weirdest thing happened. Jibreel turns up, sits him on a winged horse called Al-Buraq and flies him all the way from Mecca to Jerusalem. He prays with all the prophets who have ever lived. Then, he's taken up to the heavens to chat with some of the prophets, and then into paradise itself, where Allah tells Muhammad to pray 5 times a day and to stay strong. He's returned to Jerusalem and then flies back to the Kaaba in Mecca. We call it the night journey, and Muslims still argue whether it was a real experience or a vision, but whatever, it gave Muhammad a much needed boost, and just as well, because there were more tough times ahead. So, there was this other city called Yathrib. The people there heard about Muhammad and his message and invited him and his followers to join them. A few at a time, the Muslims left Mecca and made a dangerous journey across the desert to Yathrib. It's known as a Hijra, which means migration, like birds do. Muhammad and a few of his friends stayed in Mecca until everyone had got away and then made plans for their own escape. But the ruling families wanted to kill Muhammad while they still could, so 7 sons, one from each family, was sent in the middle of the night to stab the Prophet while he slept. But he was way ahead of them, and when they burst into the house, Muhammad was gone. Trackers were sent out to hunt him down. Muhammad and his best friend Abu Bakr took a roundabout route to try and shake off the pursuit, but the trackers were too good and slowly gained on them. So Muhammad and Abu Bakr hid in a cave and prayed that no one found them. The trackers found the cave all right, but they didn't bother going in to search. There was no way Muhammad could be inside, they thought. There was a spider's web over the mouth of the cave and a nesting bird at the entrance. He must have given them the slip. So off they went, leaving Muhammad and Abu Bakr protected by a spider and a bird. Muhammad made it safely to Yathrib, which was renamed Medina al-Nabi, the city of the Prophet, but most people just call it Medina. But Muhammad's worries weren't over yet. There were 3 big battles between the Muslims and the Meccans. First, the Battle of Badr, when Muhammad and just 313 men faced 1,000 Meccan soldiers. Miraculously, the Muslims won. Then there was the Battle of Uhud, which didn't go so well. Some of Muhammad's men disobeyed his orders and ran off during the battle to raid the Meccans' camp, and so the Muslims were outmaneuvered. Then there was the Battle of the Trench. Medina was protected on 3 sides by mountains, so when the Meccan forces advanced in the city, the Muslims just dug a deep trench. The Meccans made camp, but the weather was terrible. Pouring rain put out their fires and howling winds blew down their tents. Eventually they gave up and went back to Mecca. It was all a bit embarrassing. They were losing the respect of the local tribes who were flocking to join the Muslims. So a peace treaty was signed at Hudaybiyah. But it wasn't long before the Meccans broke it. Muhammad decided that enough was enough. By now he had over 10,000 men, so he led them across the desert to Mecca. The ruling families realised they'd made a huge mistake, but it was too late. All they could do was surrender and hope that the Muslim army killed them quickly. But Muhammad said there should be no more fighting. He rode into Mecca and went straight to the Kaaba. He circled it 7 times anti-clockwise and smashed all the idols, rededicating the Kaaba to Allah. And that's why I'm not going to show you Muhammad. The Muslims wanted to make it totally clear that they only worship the one unseen God. So they didn't have any pictures of Muhammad in case anyone thought he was an idol, and they didn't have any pictures of Allah because he's like nothing on earth, so it would be impossible to draw him anyway. So there you go, how Islam began in under 10 minutes. How did I do?
What do you think? She did her job.
Yeah, the story's pretty set in stone. So if you're a Muslim, then it's very familiar. She made it interesting.
Yeah, she did. Do you know what was fun in Synergy? Like, why was there 7 brothers? Why did he
The 7
go
ruling
around
families.
So why? And then he goes around the Kaaba, the Kaaba 7 times. Like, what's with this number 7? Reminding me of like the 7 deadly sins. That's what I pictured when I seen like the 7 families come and get him. It's very 7 brothers. So all 7 families just sent 1 brother. There's 7 of them.
Well, no one wanted to take responsibility or be unpopular or be portioned with the blame, so everybody had to send their representative.
Okay, I thought it was a good video. I think it definitely explains the story. Like I said at the start though, not that he had an agenda, because obviously his message goes far beyond that, but you know, he was trying to get some peace and quiet. That's basically how Islam started. He was trying to get some peace and quiet.
I think, again, this was in under 10 minutes, whereas if you watch the film, The Message, that will give you the same story over 3 hours.
What's that, The Message?
Yeah. That's a good film, again, about the beginning of Islam. So, that will give you a lot more detail. But then you could read it.
Yeah, you could read it, but like she brought up some interesting facts. Like I never knew that he went to Ethiopia. I've never heard anyone mention that before.
Yeah, it happened. Ethiopia, the first Hijra meaning, leave and step, get to step in.
Yeah.
So when they were in Mecca and the families were starting to plan ways of getting rid of them, then some of them did leave and go to Ethiopia and asked the Ethiopian king for asylum.
Yeah.
And, there's a scene in the film, again, which explain what the Ethiopian king said and how it go. But that's the first Hijra in Islam. This is what them often say, that the Ethiopian king was the first king that embraced Islam. Because you have to watch the film, but there's some very poignant moments in that again. Africa is a part of the history of Islam.
Yeah. Alright then, so that was how Islam began in 10 minutes. It's been a Muslim and an atheist. Break bread. We're out. Peace.
Peace.